During a luxurious party, a young girl is forced to wash piles of dishes in the middle of the kitchen. No one imagines that the cruel order came from her own stepmother, while the guests toasted to charity. But everything changes when the girl's father, the owner of the mansion, walks in and discovers the humiliation. Blake Montgomery's annual charity gala was the crown jewel of the Hamptons' summer season. As the sun set over his oceanfront estate, the $20 million mansion glowed with warm light that spilled onto manicured lawns where New York's elite mingled in designer formal wear. Crystal chandeliers reflected in marble floors. Fresh flower arrangements towered over every table, and a live string quartet played softly in the background. The tech billionaire had built his fortune developing security software that now protected half of America's financial institutions. But tonight wasn't about business. It was about raising funds for children's hospitals across the East Coast. Blake had been passionate about the cause since losing his wife Emma to illness 5 years ago, leaving him to raise their daughter Lily alone. "More champagne, and make sure it's properly chilled this time," demanded Vivian Reed, a Manhattan socialite whose family name adorned museum wings and hospital buildings. She waved an empty glass at a passing server without making eye contact. "I swear the help gets worse every year." Her companion, an aging hedge fund manager, chuckled. "What do you expect? These summer jobs attract the lowest denominator." Blake's stepmother, Marilyn Montgomery, swept through the crowd in a crimson gown that rustled with every calculated step. Though she had only been married to Blake's late father for 3 years before his passing, she had positioned herself as the unofficial queen of the Montgomery social sphere. "The governor will be arriving in 20 minutes, Marilyn snapped at the event coordinator, a young woman who was frantically checking details on her tablet. "And this centerpiece is wilting. Replace it immediately." "Yes, Mrs. Montgomery," the coordinator replied, her voice tight. "The florist is preparing—" "I don't want excuses, I want results," Marilyn cut her off. "This is a Montgomery event. Everything must be perfect." From across the room, Blake observed his stepmother's behavior with a grimace. At 42, he had the confident bearing of a man who had built something substantial from nothing. His focus tonight, however, was divided. The donations were already exceeding expectations, but he couldn't help noticing his stepmother's escalating demands. "Daddy!" a small voice called from the edge of the ballroom. 7-year-old Lily Montgomery dodged between guests in her pale blue dress, her dark curls bouncing with each step. Blake's face softened immediately. "Hey, princess," he said, kneeling to meet her eye level. "How's your evening going? Are you having fun with Miss Patricia?" "She had to take a phone call," Lily explained, her small hands gesturing expressively. "I was looking at the ice sculpture, and I accidentally bumped into a waiter, but I said sorry right away and—" "Lily!" Marilyn's sharp voice cut through their conversation as she approached with quick, determined strides. "What are you doing bothering your father? He has important guests to attend to." "She's not bothering me, Marilyn," Blake replied evenly, standing up but keeping a protective hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Nonsense," Marilyn smiled tightly, the expression not reaching her eyes. "Blake, Senator Williams is asking for you. He's considering a substantial donation." She gripped Lily's small hand. "I'll take care of this. You know these events require your full attention." Before Blake could protest, Marilyn was already steering Lily away, her nails digging slightly into the child's shoulder. "Young lady," she whispered once they were out of Blake's earshot, "you're making a spectacle of yourself. What have I told you about being seen and not heard at adult functions?" "But Miss Patricia—" "Is clearly incapable of keeping you in check. Come with me." Marilyn's face maintained a pleasant expression for any observing guests, but her words carried a chill that made Lily's stomach tighten with anxiety. As Blake reluctantly turned to greet the arriving senator, he couldn't see that his daughter was being led toward the service corridor, away from the glittering ballroom, away from the guests and toward the sprawling kitchen, where staff hurried to keep pace with the evening's demands. What transpired next would transform the evening from a celebration of charity into something else entirely, a moment of reckoning that would shatter carefully maintained facades and expose the true hearts of those gathered in that magnificent house by the sea. Blake Montgomery's annual charity gala was the crown jewel of the Hamptons summer season. As the sun set over his oceanfront estate, the $20 million mansion glowed with warm light that spilled onto manicured lawns where New York's elite mingled in designer formal wear. Crystal chandeliers reflected in marble floors. Fresh flower arrangements towered over every table, and a live string quartet played softly in the background. The tech billionaire had built his fortune developing security software that now protected half of America's financial institutions. But tonight wasn't about business. It was about raising funds for children's hospitals across the East Coast. Blake had been passionate about the cause since losing his wife Emma to illness 5 years ago, leaving him to raise their daughter Lily alone. "More champagne, and make sure it's properly chilled this time," demanded Vivian Reed, a Manhattan socialite whose family name adorned museum wings and hospital buildings. She waved an empty glass at a passing server without making eye contact. "I swear the help gets worse every year." Her companion, an aging hedge fund manager, chuckled. "What do you expect? These summer jobs attract the lowest denominator." Blake's stepmother, Marilyn Montgomery, swept through the crowd in a crimson gown that rustled with every calculated step. Though she had only been married to Blake's late father for 3 years before his passing, she had positioned herself as the unofficial queen of the Montgomery social sphere. "The governor will be arriving in 20 minutes, Marilyn snapped at the event coordinator, a young woman who was frantically checking details on her tablet. "And this centerpiece is wilting. Replace it immediately." "Yes, Mrs. Montgomery," the coordinator replied, her voice tight. "The florist is preparing—" "I don't want excuses, I want results," Marilyn cut her off. "This is a Montgomery event. Everything must be perfect." From across the room, Blake observed his stepmother's behavior with a grimace. At 42, he had the confident bearing of a man who had built something substantial from nothing. His focus tonight, however, was divided. The donations were already exceeding expectations, but he couldn't help noticing his stepmother's escalating demands. "Daddy!" a small voice called from the edge of the ballroom. 7-year-old Lily Montgomery dodged between guests in her pale blue dress, her dark curls bouncing with each step. Blake's face softened immediately. "Hey, princess," he said, kneeling to meet her eye level. "How's your evening going? Are you having fun with Miss Patricia?" "She had to take a phone call," Lily explained, her small hands gesturing expressively. "I was looking at the ice sculpture, and I accidentally bumped into a waiter, but I said sorry right away, and—" "Lily!" Marilyn's sharp voice cut through their conversation as she approached with quick, determined strides. "What are you doing bothering your father? He has important guests to attend to." "She's not bothering me, Marilyn," Blake replied evenly, standing up but keeping a protective hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Nonsense," Marilyn smiled tightly, the expression not reaching her eyes. "Blake, Senator Williams is asking for you. He's considering a substantial donation." She gripped Lily's small hand. "I'll take care of this. You know these events require your full attention." Before Blake could protest, Marilyn was already steering Lily away, her nails digging slightly into the child's shoulder. "Young lady," she whispered once they were out of Blake's earshot, "you're making a spectacle of yourself. What have I told you about being seen and not heard at adult functions?" "But Miss Patricia is clearly incapable of keeping you in check. Come with me." Marilyn's face maintained a pleasant expression for any observing guests, but her words carried a chill that made Lily's stomach tighten with anxiety. As Blake reluctantly turned to greet the arriving senator, he couldn't see that his daughter was being led toward the service corridor, away from the glittering ballroom, away from the guests and toward the sprawling kitchen, where staff hurried to keep pace with the evening's demands. What transpired next would transform the evening from a celebration of charity into something else entirely, a moment of reckoning that would shatter carefully maintained facades and expose the true hearts of those gathered in that magnificent house by the sea. "What is going on here?" Blake Montgomery's voice cut through the kitchen like a blade. The room fell silent as every head turned toward the doorway where he stood, shoulders squared, eyes fixed on his daughter's small form at the industrial sink. Marilyn recovered first, her crimson lips curving into a placating smile. "Blake, darling, I was just teaching Lily a little lesson about— I've been looking everywhere for her," Blake interrupted, his voice dangerously quiet as he crossed the kitchen floor. The staff parted before him like waves. Patricia said she couldn't find her after taking a call. He reached Lily and gently took her hands from the water, examining her reddened skin with growing anger. "Daddy," Lily whispered. relief flooding her face. "Are those tears in your eyes, Princess?" Blake asked softly, kneeling to her level. Then, still holding her hands, he turned to face his stepmother. "Marilyn, did you actually order my daughter to wash dishes at our own gala?" Vivian Reed, sensing the shift in atmosphere, straightened from her casual lean against the doorframe. "Blake, you're overreacting. The child was merely getting a taste of responsibility, something all children need, even privileged ones." "I wasn't speaking to you, Vivian," Blake said without looking at her. His eyes remained locked on Marilyn, waiting for an answer. Marilyn waved a dismissive hand. "Blake, she disrupted service, nearly caused an accident. I was simply showing her that actions have consequences. You know how important this event is. We can't have a child running amok while we're trying to impress potential donors." "Impress donors?" Blake repeated, his voice rising slightly as he stood, keeping Lily protectively beside him. "This gala exists to raise money for children who are suffering. Children who need our help. And meanwhile you're in here forcing my 7-year-old daughter to plunge her hands into scalding water as punishment for what? Being a child." The kitchen staff stood frozen, witnessing the confrontation in stunned silence. Jason Parker, the young waiter who had tried to help Lily, took a cautious step back but remained within view, his expression a mixture of concern and vindication. "It was just a bit of hot water." "Blake," Marilyn said, her tone hardening, "you're making a scene over nothing. Your father would have understood the importance of discipline." "Don't you dare invoke my father," Blake replied, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "He would never have humiliated a child like this." He looked around at the kitchen staff. "Any of you could have stopped this." "Why didn't you?" Chef Carlos stepped forward, shame evident on his face. "Sir, we tried to suggest, but Mrs. Montgomery was very insistent and we were afraid of losing your jobs," Blake finished for him. He nodded once, understanding if not approving. "I get it." Vivian Reed let out an exaggerated sigh. "Honestly, Blake, this emotional display is unnecessary. They're just the help and the girl is perfectly fine. It was just a few dishes." "Just the help?" Blake repeated, turning his full attention to Vivian for the first time. The socialite faltered under his intense gaze. "These people are working to make our event successful. They deserve our respect, not your condescension." He looked down at Lily, whose small hands were still pink from the hot water. "And this is my daughter. Not the girl. My daughter, in her own home." The weight of those words hung in the air. Several of the kitchen staff exchanged glances of surprise. Many hadn't realized the child was Blake Montgomery's daughter. Vivian's perfectly made-up face paled slightly as the implications of her behavior began to sink in. "I think we should take this discussion somewhere private," Marilyn suggested, her eyes darting toward the staff. "No," Blake said firmly. "I think we should take this discussion back to our guests." He lifted Lily into his arms and headed toward the door. "After all, isn't this gala about helping children? Let's make sure everyone understands exactly what that means." Marilyn's composed facade cracked for the first time. "Blake, you can't possibly—" But he was already striding through the door, carrying Lily. The kitchen staff watched in amazement as Jason Parker, the young waiter, impulsively followed them out. In the glittering ballroom, guests were mingling over champagne and dessert, donations still rolling in on the electronic board displayed above the orchestra. Blake's entrance caused a ripple of awareness to spread through the crowd. The string quartet faltered momentarily as he climbed the short steps to the small stage where the microphone stood. "Ladies and gentlemen," Blake began, his voice carrying across the suddenly hushed room. Lily, still in his arms, buried her face against his shoulder. "I want to thank you all for your generosity tonight. The millions we've raised will help countless children who are suffering. Children who deserve dignity, protection, and kindness." The guests nodded and murmured in agreement, unaware of the storm about to break. "Yet I've just discovered something disturbing happening in our own home," Blake continued. "My daughter Lily was forced to wash dishes in our kitchen, her hands in scalding water, as punishment for the crime of accidentally bumping into a server." Gasps and murmurs rippled through the crowd. Marilyn, who had followed Blake into the ballroom, froze at the edge of the gathered guests, her face a mask of controlled fury. Vivian Reed tried to slide inconspicuously behind a group of donors, but found herself trapped by their sudden stillness. "I want to be perfectly clear," Blake said, his voice gaining strength. "This gala exists to protect vulnerable children. So I find it particularly hypocritical that while we raise glasses to charity, some of us think nothing of humiliating those who serve us, and worse, of exploiting a child in the process." The orchestra had fallen completely silent now. In the corner of the room, Senator Williams looked uncomfortable, while several of New York's most prominent philanthropists shifted awkwardly in place. Jason Parker, standing just inside the ballroom doors, watched with growing amazement as Blake Montgomery continued his unexpected speech. "I'd like to make an announcement," Blake continued, standing tall on the stage with Lily still in his arms. "The Montgomery-Reed technology partnership we were planning to announce tonight is hereby cancelled." A collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. Richard Reed, Vivian's husband and CEO of Reed Technologies, pushed through the crowd with panic evident on his face. "Blake, surely we can discuss this privately," Richard stammered, casting a furious glance at his wife. "Whatever Vivian said, this isn't just about words, Richard," Blake replied firmly. "It's about values. I won't partner with people who believe some human beings are inherently less valuable than others." He shifted Lily to his other arm. "And I certainly won't do business with anyone who thinks it's acceptable to humiliate a child." Martha Wellington, an elderly philanthropist who rarely spoke at such events, tapped her cane against the marble floor. "Well said, young man. My mother was a domestic worker who raised me alone after my father left. She taught me that service isn't undignified. What's undignified is believing yourself superior." The conductor of the string quartet stood up. "Mrs. Reed called me the hired help with the fiddle earlier and asked if I could play something less dreary. I've been conducting for the New York Philharmonic for 12 years. More voices joined in, sharing stories of casual cruelty and dismissiveness they'd witnessed or experienced. The elegant facade of the evening cracked wide open, revealing the ugly entitlement that often lurked beneath the surface of wealth and privilege. Marilyn Montgomery, seeing her social standing crumbling before her eyes, attempted damage control. "Blake is overreacting to a simple disciplinary moment," she announced loudly. "Lily was simply helping in the kitchen. Children need structure and consequences." "That's not what I saw," Jason Parker said, stepping forward from the edge of the crowd. Though dressed in server's attire, he spoke with quiet confidence. Mrs. Montgomery forced Lily to wash dishes in water hot enough to turn her hands red. She and Mrs. Reed mocked her, and they mocked me for trying to help her. Vivian Reed's face flushed with anger. "This is absurd. The waiter is clearly lying to curry favor with his employer." "His name is Jason," Blake said, "and I believe him." Richard Reed, seeing the business deal slipping away, grew desperate. "Blake, let's be reasonable. Vivian had too much champagne. She didn't mean anything by it." "I think she meant exactly what she said," Blake replied coldly. "And I think it's time both she and my stepmother left my home." As security discreetly approached Vivian and Marilyn, the ballroom buzzed with shocked conversations. Some guests slipped away, embarrassed to be associated with the evening's drama. Others approached Blake to express support, though he noted with bitter amusement that several were the same people who had laughed at Vivian's elitist jokes earlier. After the last guest departed, Blake sat alone in his study, the mansion quiet around him. Lily had finally fallen asleep, emotionally exhausted from the evening's events. He stared at his computer screen, a gnawing suspicion driving him to review the home's security footage from recent weeks. What he discovered turned his blood cold. The cameras revealed a pattern of cruelty by Marilyn toward Lily when Blake wasn't present. In the library, Marilyn tore up Lily's drawings while the child wasn't looking, then blamed the cleaning staff. During lunch, Marilyn removed Lily's plate, claiming, "Children who can't sit properly don't deserve to eat with adults." In the garden, Marilyn instructed the groundskeeper to ignore Lily if she asked for help finding her lost stuffed animal. Most disturbing was footage from Blake's last business dinner. Marilyn leading Lily to an old storage room, pretending it was a game of explorer, giving her a flashlight and an old book, then quietly locking the door from outside. The timestamp showed Lily spent 3 hours there while Blake entertained investors upstairs. His hands shaking with rage, Blake closed the laptop. The confrontation at the gala hadn't been an isolated incident. It was just the first time he'd witnessed Marilyn's true nature. He'd been blind to the suffering happening under his own roofie. The next morning, as sunrise painted the Hampton sky in shades of pink and gold, Blake's phone rang constantly. News of the gala confrontation had leaked to social media. A shaky cell phone video showed his speech and the aftermath, with the hashtag #ItyoDishesAtTheGala trending nationwide. Marilyn had already launched her counteroffensive, giving a tearful interview to a morning show claiming she'd been misunderstood and that Lily had been playing a game in the kitchen. "I would never hurt a child," she insisted, dabbing at perfectly dry eyes. "Blake is using his daughter as an emotional pawn in a business disagreement." But her attempt at manipulation crumbled when more videos from the gala surfaced, clearly showing Lily's red hands and frightened expression. Former household staff, emboldened by Blake's public stand, began sharing their own stories of Marilyn's cruelty. Blake's assistant handed him a stack of messages that had arrived overnight. Letters, emails and calls from kitchen workers, housekeepers, drivers, and gardeners who had worked previous Montgomery events. All expressed gratitude for his willingness to acknowledge their humanity. "Mr. Montgomery," one letter read, "I've served at 3 of your galas. Last night was the first time I felt seen as a person, not just as someone holding a tray. Thank you." In his sunlit office, Blake made 2 calls. First to his lawyers, initiating proceedings to legally remove Marilyn from any connection to the Montgomery family and businesses. The second call was to a child psychologist, arranging support for Lily to process the emotional abuse she had endured. As he hung up, Lily appeared in the doorway, still in her pajamas, clutching her favorite stuffed elephant. "Is Marilyn coming back?" she asked in a small voice. Blake knelt down to her level. "No, sweetheart. She's never coming back. And I'm so sorry I didn't realize sooner what was happening." Lily's small shoulders relaxed visibly. "Jason was nice to me," she said, changing the subject in the way children often do. "He showed me how to wash the plates without breaking them." "Yes, he was kind when others weren't," Blake agreed. "That's a rare quality." An idea began to form in Blake's mind, one that would allow something good to emerge from the previous night's painful revelations. But first, he needed to have a serious conversation with his daughter about everything she had experienced under Marilyn's care. The road to healing would be long, but it would begin with truth. 6 months later, the Westfield Children's Hospital Benefit Gala illuminated the Boston skyline from the top floor of the city's most prestigious hotel. Though not as intimate as Blake Montgomery's Hamptons estate, the venue offered something his previous gala had lacked: a fresh start. Blake adjusted his bow tie in the elevator mirror, Lily standing beside him in a purple dress she had chosen herself. At 8 years old now, she seemed more confident, her therapy sessions helping her process Marilyn's emotional abuse. The custody battle had been brief but intense, Marilyn claiming parental rights through her short marriage to Blake's father. The security footage had silenced those claims permanently. "Ready, Dad?" Lily asked, her hand securely in his. "As long as we're together," Blake replied, squeezing her fingers gently. The elevator doors opened to reveal a ballroom transformed. Unlike the ostentatious displays of wealth at his previous events, this gala focused on the children being helped. Artwork created by hospital patients adorned the walls. Staff members from the hospital mingled freely with donors. The music came from a youth orchestra comprised of children who had benefited from previous year's fundraising. "Mr. Montgomery, welcome." The hospital director approached with a warm smile. "And this must be Lily. Your father has told us what a compassionate young lady you are." Lily beamed at the recognition. In the months following what social media had dubbed "dishes at the gala," she had begun accompanying Blake on hospital visits, reading to younger patients, and helping deliver toys donated by Montgomery Technologies. As they moved through the crowd, Blake noted with satisfaction how different the atmosphere felt. Servers were greeted with eye contact and thanks. The hospital janitor, who had been invited as an honored guest, received the same respect as the neurosurgeon, presenting the latest medical equipment. "Blake Montgomery," a familiar voice caught his attention. Turning, he found Senator Williams approaching with an extended hand. "Remarkable turnout tonight." "Senator," Blake nodded, accepting the handshake. "I'm pleased you could make it. Your last gala certainly made waves, the senator said, lowering his voice. I've been thinking a lot about what you said that night. About dignity and respect. He glanced at a nearby server who was offering champagne. Thank you, young man. I appreciate your service tonight. The small gesture, so basic, yet once so rare in these circles, confirmed for Blake that his public stand had created ripples beyond his immediate social sphere. Across the room, he spotted a tall young man in a well-fitted suit, studying the architectural details of the ceiling. With a start, he recognized Jason Parker. Not in server's attire this time, but as a guest. Excuse us, Senator, Blake said, guiding Lily toward the young man. Jason! Lily called out, breaking free to run toward him. Jason turned, surprise giving way to a broad smile. Miss Lily, you've grown at least an inch since I last saw you. And you're wearing a suit now, she observed with childlike directness. Indeed I am, Jason laughed. Thanks to your father. Following the confrontation at the Hamptons Gala, Blake had created a scholarship fund specifically for service workers pursuing higher education. Jason had been the first recipient, allowing him to attend Cornell's architecture program full-time, without working double shifts. How are your studies? Blake asked, joining them. Challenging but rewarding, Jason replied. I'm working on a design project for accessible children's spaces in hospitals. That's actually why I'm here tonight, to see if I can get some feedback from the medical professionals. I'd like to see your design sometime, Blake said. Montgomery Tech is planning a new children's wing at Westfield next year. We might be able to incorporate some of your ideas. Jason's eyes widened. That would be incredible, Mr. Montgomery. Please. It's Blake. He hesitated, then added, what you did that night, standing up for Lily when I wasn't there, I'll never forget it. Before Jason could respond, the hospital director tapped a microphone, calling for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, we've reached an extraordinary milestone tonight. Our fundraising goal of $15 million has not only been met but exceeded. Applause filled the room as the digital display showed the final tally. 17,325 And now, the director continued, I'd like to invite Blake and Lily Montgomery to say a few words. As Blake guided Lily to the small stage, he marveled at how a moment of cruelty had ultimately led to transformation. Marilyn's social standing had collapsed under the weight of revealed truth. Vivian Reed's husband had filed for divorce after the business fallout damaged their company's stock value. But more importantly, something had shifted in the way the wealthy elite treated those who served them, at least in Blake's circles. Standing at the microphone, Blake lifted Lily so she could speak first. Thank you for helping kids like me, she said simply. Everyone deserves to be treated nicely. The audience applauded the child's straightforward wisdom. When the room quieted again, Blake stepped forward. 6 months ago, I witnessed something in my own home that forced me to confront uncomfortable truths. I saw how easy it is for wealth and privilege to blind us to the humanity of others. I saw how cruelty can hide behind social niceties. And, most painfully, I saw how my own inattention allowed someone I trusted to harm the person I love most. The room fell silent as he continued. Tonight isn't about luxury or status or being seen at the right event. It's about remembering that true wealth lies in how we treat each other, especially those we perceive as having less power than ourselves. It's about recognizing that every person who serves a drink, cleans a floor, or helps a child deserves the same dignity we demand for ourselves. He looked at Jason, standing tall and proud in the audience. Sometimes our greatest teachers are those we least expect, and sometimes the most valuable lessons come from our most painful moments. As Blake and Lily left the stage hand in hand, they were met not with the polite, distant applause of previous years, but with something rarer and more precious, authentic connection. Doctors thanked them with tears in their eyes. Hospital volunteers shared stories of children who would benefit. And through it all, Lily's small hand remained firmly in her father's, not out of fear this time, but out of love and growing confidence. Later that night, as Blake tucked Lily into bed in their hotel suite, she asked a question that caught him by surprise. Daddy, are we going to be okay now? Blake sat on the edge of her bed, considering how to answer truthfully. We're going to be more than okay, he finally said. We're going to be better, because now we know what matters most. As Lily drifted to sleep, Blake stepped out onto the balcony overlooking Boston Harbor. 6 months ago, his world had been built on appearances. A beautiful home, a successful business, a picture-perfect family. Now he understood that true value lay not in what you possessed, but in how you treated others along the way. And in that understanding, both father and daughter had found something neither wealth nor status could provide: healing.